Welcome back. I've got Rhoda Banks on the line. Rhoda, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Michael?
I am good. I'm really looking forward to this interview and this chat because it's unique. But there's going to be a lot of things that we discuss today that will resonate with my audience and the people and the businesses in the world that they're in, all that. So, why don't you share a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into this very important conversation.
Yeah, I am Rhoda Banks, and I am based in St. Louis, Missouri, where I was raised and born. And I also am the executive head of culture and inclusion at agriculture banking, part of the farm credit system. That system's been around about 100 plus years. My background, though, I started in healthcare as a cashier in the parking garage, actually at the hospital system here in St. Louis, Missouri, and worked my way up various roles. I like to call that story from the parking garage to the boardroom. Sometimes I say from the projects to the boardroom because I grew up in low income housing in the inner city of downtown St. Louis. Background wise, though, I am fully educated. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration, two master's degrees, one in human resource training and development, one in healthcare administration because I did work in healthcare as a non clinician for 25 years. I've been in various roles from contract management, reimbursement analyst, financial analyst, but my true passion has always been in educating and pouring into others. And so I had a desire and a goal to get into HR on the leadership development side. Believe it or not, it took 15 years to get an opportunity because they often hire from within. If you didn't grow up in HR, it's really a hard place to break into. But with my excellent networking skills, I built relationships along the way. I inserted myself into committees related to HR. I got on projects in the organization and I built a brand for myself. And all of the HR executives knew my name, and when an opportunity came open, one called me and said, Rhoda, I want you on the team. And that led to me getting into the field of HR, where I started as the director of innovation and learning, and then director of organizational development and performance management, then talent management. And then that led to the role I'm in now, which is over culture and inclusion. And I, at one point, exited healthcare and then ended up in agriculture banking.
Oh, you and I are both former healthcare kids because
Yeah.
I worked as an executive for multi-site primary care clinics and other nonprofit agencies for just
Yeah.
over 15 years. So,
Mhm.
I'm sure we've got stories.
Yeah.
But some of those stories, like, we don't want to share with the public because we don't want to scare people.
No,
And no sense bringing up old traumas. That's,
that's right. We got
we
enough trauma in life. So yeah.
exactly. We don't need to dig up old ones too. But
Yeah.
yeah, your background, there's so many twists and turns. But the thing that is hammered home for me when thinking about that, when I encounter and meet great people like yourself,
Mhm.
is even though you've done a lot of different things, there's so many connecting points without
Yeah.
with them. Running healthcare organizations is a people business.
Yeah.
It is a resource business. You were, in my opinion, and having worked in HR and recruited and all that good stuff and consulted and all of that, um, I think part, and you nailed it. It's like, oh, you haven't worked in this industry, so you don't know HR. Actually, that was not true. You knew more about HR than the HR people did, and I'll tell them that to their face. I mean, I'll be polite about it, but I'll
Right.
tell them right to their face. No, Rhoda knows more about HR than
Mhm.
you know HR. And again, not to be diminishing to anybody,
Right.
but
Right.
you knew it, and thankfully, with your networking and organizations, they came to the point of going, okay,
Yes.
they know what you're doing. Let's give you a chance. We'll
Mhm.
do this. And of course, as you've always done in your life, from the parking lot,
Mhm.
charging people for parking,
Yes.
to running a healthcare organization,
Mhm.
it's like the success story after success story after success
Mhm.
story. And and sometimes when you're the one that does that,
Mhm.
I think sometimes we go, well, yeah, I did that, but I want to, I want people to recognize, how amazing that is, and how your dedication to yourself and your own well-being and your own existence to serve
Mhm.
and be a caring individual coming from the background that you were in. But I know, a lot of people that grew up in inner city situations. I'm originally from Metro Detroit. I also spent time in Chicago, and I know a lot of people that, either were heavily involved in those areas or grew up in those areas. And a theme that I see a lot, a common trait that I see with a lot is you understand community a lot better than a lot of
Mhm.
us that weren't
Mhm.
in those
Mhm.
type of situations. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as far as the community thing. And I definitely want to get to your book because
Yes.
people are seeing it if they're watching the video and they're going, wait a minute, daughter of an assassin. We've been talking about healthcare and HR. It's like,
Right.
well, I'm not actually. I was going to say something, but I'm going to zip my lip before I say anything any
Right.
further. But I want, I want to hear what you have to say about community, and then we're going to, jump into the book.
Okay, Michael, I love that you asked that question. Community, you're right, it's spot on. So as hard as it was and as traumatic as it was to grow up in the neighborhood I grew up in and in the household I grew up in and in the family I was born into, I still long for that sense of community that I felt as a child, as a teenager growing up in that community. Everybody knew everybody. I thought I was related to everybody. Like I to this day still call certain people family and cousins, but we weren't really technically blood related. But everyone knew everyone and everyone looked out for everyone unless you were on somebody's bad list. That could lead to some traumatic situations, which I talk about in the book. But yeah, community is special, and especially in that type of environment where we're all struggling, and we have that in common. We bond over the trauma, we call it trauma bonding, and over the lack and the scarcity. But as we age, and then specifically in the community I grew up in, it still exists to this day. Those housing projects are still there, and lots of people I grew up with still live there. And I like to say they never got out. Like they don't even aspire, it seems, to want to change. Every year for the past 50 plus years, they've had an annual picnic in Car Square Village, which is where I grew up. And we used to go because we lived down there. So we would go to the park and it would be people who grew up and they would come back to visit. Well, when I moved away, got married, etc., I may have gone back twice. And so this 2 summers ago, lots of people that grew up with me were pinging me on Facebook, Rhoda, we want to see you at the Car Square reunion. And normally I drag one of my sisters. She called them Rhoda Adventures. I usually take her wherever I go, but she was out of the country. So I tried to invite my husband. He refused to go. So I went by myself. Bad mistake. I got to see lots of people, but it was a group of younger generation people standing in the corner, and it didn't feel right. And despite my intuition, I wanted to leave, but I stayed. And 100 feet from where I was sitting, gunshots let out. So some guys pulled up and started shooting at these guys, and I was sitting right there. I was so shaken up. So as I was packing my things and trying to leave, I saw people who I hadn't seen in forever, and they was like, "Rhoda, don't leave. It's normally not like this." I was like, "I'm sorry, guys. I love you, but I gotta go." And as I was driving home, I was shook. I was shaken up, and it just re-triggered a lot of the memories and situations I recall, but I still long for those people that I knew and grew up with. And as I was driving home, it came to me that I was blessed enough to be delivered from that environment, and I don't have to look back. And that's not, I don't have to feel guilty and feel a sense of obligation to stay connected. but there are things that I can do in the world that honor the community, that honor the people, not necessarily who I knew, but people who were born into the similar situations that I was.
Thank you for your transparency and for sharing that. It's important for people to hear these types of stories because
Mhm.
when we leave areas that are, lower income or assisted living type of
Mhm.
situations and all that in communities like that, as you said, it's been
Yes.
5 decades and it's still there.
Mhm.
And there's I'm sure, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure that there are, a whole lot of emotions and going,
Mhm.
you know, I was able to move on from that and
Yeah.
do all the things, and these people and you're like they could too, but
Yes.
they, for some reason, they choose not to, and it frustrates us. And
Yeah.
yeah, when I see friends or people that I know that have, from my vantage point, there's no limit to the success that they'll have in their lives, but for
Yeah.
some reason they choose paths that keep them where they
Mhm.
are.
Yes.
And I feel, and again, I understand, it's like, okay, you know, if you're a religious person, it's, the universe, God's will, whatever the
Right.
situation be. And the last time I checked, I am definitely not, God or, be of all type of thing, and don't pretend to. But I think that, a lot of times, like, I wish they would do it, but then, part of me goes, they are where they are, and
Mhm.
that's their path, and you let them live their path. If
Mhm.
they choose to
Right.
do something, hope they will. But
Yeah.
you did, and obviously, I'm guessing because of that experience you had when you went back, um, if your husband would have, begrudgingly went that time, he
Yeah.
certainly won't go again. And my hunch
So,
is, based on what you saw,
mhm.
the likelihood of you returning is slim to none and slim
Yeah.
left town. So and that's
Mhm.
sad because we all have this. There's this connection to home, no matter good, bad, and different. It's
Right.
there. So let's segue into this book that, again,
Mhm.
if people are watching on YouTube or wherever they're consuming this, they see it in the backdrop. Daughter of an Assassin. Now,
Yes.
what in the world is that about? And yeah, I mean the title tells us, it's
Right.
we don't have to guess. It's like, what's this book about? We know
Right.
that, but share what you're comfortable with sharing
Yeah.
about the book. Why you felt in your heart
Mhm.
that it needed to be a story that needed to be shared with the
Yeah.
world and all that.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Michael. And again, thank you for having me. I have always felt like it was something about my life story and journey that needed to be shared. And as I aged and matured, I recognized that I've gone through lots, and those lessons that I've gone through and experiences, if I shared them, it could help someone else. So that was at the base of motivation. The other one was I have two sons, and my life is that I've created for them is so drastically different from what I grew up under, that it was the best I can do to illustrate to them, this is what your mom went through, this is where your mom comes from, etc. So it's also about leaving a legacy so that they have a deeper understanding of who was Rhoda and what made her the way she was. Daughter of an assassin. So as I'm thinking about wanting to write a book years ago, probably 20, I'm traveling for work and this acronym drops in my spirit, and it was DOA, which normally stands for Dead on Arrival. And I was like, oh, that could be an intriguing title, because what that means to me is I wasn't supposed to make it. I mean, if you have heard all of the things I've gone through, you'd be like, you still here? um, and as I began to think about the book, I was like, but that's not true. I made it. So I wasn't dead on arrival. But I say, what else? I am a daughter of an assassin. I really am. Uh, my father, well known in St. Louis, um, He's deceased. He was murdered when I was 5, but it's amazing that I don't even remember him. I only remember going to the funeral. He was this much part of my life, but such a huge shadow. And my mom used to say, and I didn't understand it then, I didn't understand it till I got actually close to 30. Why she used to say, do not tell people who your dad is. You got to be careful. Do not say who your dad is. And it will always come up in conversations. When I was at work, I worked a summer job, and I shared that with my supervisor, and he looked at me and he said, your dad killed my brother. I was 14 years old. And my response was always, he was killed when I was 5. I didn't know what else to say as a 14-year-old. So this particular story, he said, you look just like him. And I do. And then he later told me and my friend we could leave early. And so we were all excited, left early. Next day we get back, we were fired. And he said, because we left the job site. And I remember crying and begging and pleading. I was like, you told us we could leave early. And he said, I did not. So I ran home crying, telling my mom. She said, I told you to stop telling who your dad was. I still didn't put two and two together till years later. I was like, oh, he couldn't stand to look at me because of the sin that my dad had done. And he has a reputation. He was in the military, a trained marksman, got out, got with the local gang in St. Louis, and became the hitman for the gang. And my grandmother used to tell me all the stories. I've even had a contract put out on my life when I was a kid because of an action he took. And praise God, it didn't work out. That child lived that he shot, but the plan was if that child would have died, they were going to kill me. Now, I used to ask why me because he had like 12 kids all over St. Louis. And my grandmother used to tell me easy access because of where we lived. And so that's the book isn't necessarily about him. I do share a few stories, but the shadow of which I lived under. But in writing this book, what I discovered the biggest assassin of my life, rest her soul, was my mom, due to unresolved trauma that she never dealt with, and probably some mental illness too, and that impacted her parenting. Her parenting impacted me and my siblings and my spirit and my confidence and all these things I've been struggling with my entire life that I've been fighting to overcome. She didn't realize it and recognize it, but it really assassinated even our sibling. I have 3 younger sisters, and I'm only close with one of them, and the three of them don't talk to one another. All of that was jumbled up and assassinated as a result of the dysfunction and immaturity that she had. And I love her dearly, miss her so much. But this is my truth, and that is the truth. So the book is about all those traumas and situations and upbringing that I experienced. But despite all of that, she did want something better for us, and she found a private school. They had a grant, and they bused us to Lutheran grade school. I credit this to opening my eyes to other opportunities. And so I got to meet friends in other neighborhoods outside of where I grew up. And then they were going to a private Lutheran high school, and I wanted to go. She couldn't afford it. Out of nowhere, she started getting a social security check because my father was military. She didn't know how she ended up getting a check because she never filled out paperwork. My aunt, one of my dad's sister, did. And that's how she was able to pay for me to go to a private high school. Now, I had to catch 3 public buses to get to it because I live deep in the city and it was in the county, but I wanted to go that bad. And even that came with some issues because when they found out I lived in the ghetto, is what they started teasing me about. I had to endure all of the taunting and the laughter that came with that. And even like thinking back, I didn't know that I was as strong as I was, because it didn't phase me. I just like withdrew from those people. But I kept going and I graduated from that high school. And then that led, meeting people who saw potential in me, who told me you have a lot of potential. That encouraged and inspired me, which I believe helped create the path that I ended up on.
That is such a moving, and again, thank you for your transparency because yeah, those types of stories for some people are really, really difficult to
Yeah.
not only think about but talk
Mhm,
about.
mhm,
And when you were sharing those stories and the determination, taking 3 buses,
mhm.
from the city out to the county, I'm guessing pretty early in the day.
Early. It was always
Uh,
dark. Yes.
and and then being kids are kids. They
Mhm.
they 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 pick on other kids and bully, and that's been happening since the beginning of kids.
Yes.
And you could have easily said, you know what, I don't want to go through that type of torture, but
Mhm,
somewhere somehow the spirit within you said, no, we're going to persevere. We're
mhm.
going to take this as an opportunity.
Yes.
I thank your aunt for filling out that paperwork.
Yes.
And so you could go there, which, as you said a moment ago, opened up your eyes to
Mhm,
opportunities,
mhm.
and you got a taste of that, and you're like, you know
Yeah.
what, so, even at a very young age, you recognized I'm going to do something
Yes.
with my life, and with the odds, quite
Mhm.
frankly, we're stacked against you, but
Right.
you 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 you
Mhm.
you busted through all of those
Yes.
and became the gracious human being that you are, and
Mhm.
that's in that spirit and that foundation of never forgetting where you came from.
Right.
That in the community thing we talked about before,
Mhm.
that resonates in everything that you do.
Yes.
And I sense that
Mhm.
immensely. I mean, I feel the energy on there, and there's some traits about you that actually remind me of my late mom.
Mhm.
Grew up in lower income area,
Yes.
picked on as a kid.
Mhm.
Nowhere near, not to compare challenges or anything like that.
Right.
No, did not go through, the level of trauma
Mhm.
situations, to my knowledge anyway,
Mhm.
that you have, but there
Mhm.
was still trauma and
Yes.
experiences and things like that that carried through
Mhm.
her entire life. And when you mentioned your mom and how you kind of view her as
Mhm.
an assassin because of unaddressed trauma,
Mhm.
there are so many parents and
Right.
people right now that are not dealing with the traumas in their lives, whether
Mhm.
they go back years
Right.
or they're as recent as what transpired in 2020.
You're so
Um,
true.
and I beg you, I would get on my knees, but then you wouldn't see me on the camera. Um, Please, people, there's never been more access to
Yeah.
mental health assistance and care. Screw this, the stigma about it. You want to be the best version of you. If you want to
Yeah.
crush it in life, then get the help that you need.
Yeah.
It's helping you to work through it and
Mhm.
look at things in a way that can help you break through some of either past traumas or some
Yeah.
barriers that you're running up against. It could be self-confidence, who knows, it could be a variety of
Mhm.
things. But
Mhm.
go get that help. You know why? Because because we need everybody to be their
Right.
absolute best. Because if they are, guess what? We all benefit as a society.
Do.
And you did it, and think about the countless lives that you have impacted.
Yes.
Even those people in your old hometown
Mhm.
that begged you to come and
Mhm.
begged you to stay. Why did they want you to stay?
Right.
Because they saw hope for them in you.
Mhm.
And they were and it's still there.
Yes.
And that's my hope and prayer for all of those people is that they
Mhm.
will, figure out, okay, what do I do? It's one step, it's one
Yeah.
opportunity, it's one taking to, being presented an opportunity and running with it. And it could be something as simple as an ant filling out a form, or
Right.
an opportunity to, pick up another job just outside of town that gives you have a
Mhm.
conversation. Next thing you know, you're working over here, or you know somebody and you get an HR job after
Mhm.
15 years.
Right.
There's all of these things in life. Opportunities are there. You have to be aware of them. You have to
Mhm,
go after them, and you have.
mhm.
And I think that that speaks volumes to the person that you are and the person that you're still becoming, because you're not done yet. You've got
No?
you got work to do.
Yeah.
But in closing, is there anything you want to share with our audience when it comes to
Mhm.
anything we've talked about today? Something you want to leave them with, just a
Yeah.
nugget. What would that be?
Something you said, and you said it a couple of times, you mentioned the word choice. And it is really about choice. And what I want to leave your listeners with is I we don't need to compare traumas or situations because we've all gone through something in life and we all have a story. But what I want individuals to do is if they should purchase this book, look at it as a mirror and do some self-reflection and say what have I really not tapped into or broken through. Something you said, because if you want to kill it at this life and you want to be about your business and fulfill your purpose, you kind of have to dig and uncover these situations and these issues. And so I love to say this. If you Google your chances of being born, what are your chances of being born? It's 1 in 300 billion, something like that. If we made it on earth, we all have a purpose. And in order to fulfill your purpose to the best that you can, you have to be the best version of yourself. In order to be the best version of yourself, you got to deal with the stuff that we don't like to deal with. We think we've suppressed it, but no, it's showing up in different ways and it's causing us to not be all that we can be. And also, I believe we all have a unique purpose to help someone else in some kind of way. How I help someone, what my role is, may look different than yours, but it's definitely about connecting and helping others. And I can't be a blessing to others if I'm not blessed. And so, in order to do that, we got to do the work. Writing a book was very therapeutic for me. Once it was done, it was like, whoo. And now I'm exposing myself to everyone. Doesn't bother me because I'm an open book. As you can tell, I'm very transparent, probably to a fault. But that is just who I am. And I believe in being your authentic self. So the word I will use to people is remember it's about choice. And no matter what circumstance you're faced with, no matter what situation you find yourself in, you can decision your way out of that by being very intentional, opening yourself to the universe and to others and to people, putting yourself into situations, doing things afraid, being scared and doing it anyway, creating opportunities for yourself. I enjoy having things to look forward to. And if there's nothing emerging, I'm going to create it. I'm going to create something to look forward to. And those are my words I would love to leave with the listening and the viewers.
Thank you so much for that. So, where can people find more about you, pick up the book,
Yeah.
and anything else? What links would
Yes.
you like to share?
So the book officially goes on sale May the 17th, May the 15th, I'm sorry. And the reason why May the 15th is because that's National Family Day. And I intentionally wanted to connect this story with that because it really is about the impact that families have on the trajectory of our lives. And so right now it will be available on Amazon. And the rhodaexperience.com website will be up shortly. I'm building my brand, and it is the Rhoda Experience. And I am on LinkedIn under Rhoda Banks. I'm also on Instagram, Rhoda.Banks, and I'm on Facebook as Rhoda Banks. So if anyone is trying to find Rhoda Banks, they can find me. And the book, I'm going to be posting the links to how to get the book and all of that. But right now, it is, I just want to launch it on that very special day.
That's awesome. That's a great day, and we'll definitely have all those links in the show notes, and we'll definitely promote it up to and obviously on launch day as well, because I think it's a very important book for people to read of no matter where you are in life, because it's a good way for you to, like I said, look at it as a mirror and do the work that you need to do. So, Rhoda, thank you so much for this
Thank you.
amazing conversation. Really appreciate you and continued health and wealth and success. And we'll look forward to reading the book once it's live. So thanks
Yeah.
again for being on the show.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you. Take care.